8 p.m. I would like to call our work session to order. Mr. Truesdale, could you please call the roll?
Ms. Daniels.
Here.
Ms. Green.
Present.
Mr. Majors.
Here.
Ms. Rose.
Present.
Mr. Rodriguez.
Present.
Ms. Bowers.
Present.
Thank you.
Thank you. For committee business this evening, we will hear from the Building and Housing Committee. I will defer to Chair Majors to lead our discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, President Powers. I will be meeting of the Building and Housing Committee. We have one bill and one resolution for consideration. First bill is Bill 2 of 2023, ordinance appropriating partial home investment partnership program funds from the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development for fiscal year 2020 and appropriating home investment partnership funds for fiscal year 2022 and authorizing expenditure of such funds. With us, we have Director Hill. If you could provide us with a brief overview of Bill 2 of 2023, then I'll open up to questions from members of council.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Denise Hill, Director of Building and Housing and Economic Development. Also here with me, I have Patrice Stockins, Program Manager for the Home Development Program. So just a brief overview of the project. This is a proposed 50-unit project of rental units at 15th and Regina in that area. There will be 17 one-bedroom units, 19 two-bedroom units, and 14 three-bedroom units for a total of 50 units. And $600,000 in home development funds have been allocated or asked to be appropriated for a total project cost of $13,214,615. And there is mixed funding on this project by TLC work-based training between home development, PHFA, which they are very close to closing as of like next month. And then also some traditional commercial lending. And then if there are any questions about either the bill or the resolution or the project, I'm happy to listen.
Thank you. Could you provide us with the number of units and then the breakdown of the units one more time?
Sure. So there'll be 50 total units. One bedroom, there will be 17 of those. Two bedrooms, there'll be 19. And then three bedrooms, there'll be 14.
Okay. All right. And I'll before I ask any questions, excuse me, I'll open up to my colleagues. So I'll start with to my far left with Councilman Rodriguez. Any questions?
No, not currently. I appreciate the 3-bedroom though. It shows that you're looking for families to move in with no other intentions. Is that currently a vacant lot where there's like a lot of, I guess like stone and different gravel on 15th from Regina?
Yes.
Okay, I know exactly where that is. Thank you. No further questions, Chair Majors.
Thank you. Councilwoman Daniels on Bill 2.
Just a clarification. Are we allocating all of the funds or just a portion of the funds?
Just a portion. So 600,000 of the 13 million would be allocated out of home development funds.
Okay, and then are we allocating to anyone else from those funds, or is it just specifically to the one project?
The 600,000 is just for TLC. There are other organizations. There's a total of 4 organizations receiving home development funds.
Okay, thank you. And that's it for me.
And those are being allocated tonight. Yes.
Okay. President Bowers.
Good evening. Thank you both for being here tonight. I just had one clarifying question. So I noted is this a corrective action from 2020 as well? Because I I know that it was something, I think that we previously approved, but the subrecipients weren't clear. Is that correct?
So the council voted on the annual action plan, and it had home dollars of 300,000 appropriated for new construction for affordable housing without a recipient. And because there's not a recipient, it has to come back to the council to designate that recipient.
Thank you for clarifying. I just wanted to make sure that that was clear. I don't have any other questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice President Green.
I don't have many questions. Just to be clear, you said that there are 4 recipients?
Yes, of home, not for this particular project, but for the home development, yes.
Okay, so tonight we're just voting on the portion for TLC, or we're voting
No.
for all of it?
No, this particular bill is with respect to that allocation. There's another resolution.
No, so we're clear.
Oh, hold on.
The
Okay.
bill
The bill itself, okay.
has TLC, the YMCA,
YMCA,
Tri-County
Tri-County, sorry.
HDC.
Okay, I
Are
thought
on
so, but I thought that it was said that it wasn't for all of them. So I just want to make sure that this
No,
bill encompasses all.
So
2020 was for TLC. That was the
Right.
corrective. And then the action plan for 2022
It's in section
includes
3.
the 4.
Okay,
And at line 71 and 72, 73, what it acknowledges is that they give you the total balance available of home funds. They don't appropriate them all, and it says that the balance on those 2 years' funds will come back to council for further appropriation.
okay. All right, that's the only question I have. Thank you.
Councilwoman Rawls.
Good evening. Thank you for being here tonight. I did have a few questions. How much will the 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, and 3-bedroom be? Do you know yet, or is that?
So that hasn't been set. There will be a mix of fair market rate and also affordable housing. So 10 of the units are slated to be affordable. At least 10 of them will be affordable and also work-based training. So they have a program. They'll feed right into the work-based training program and housing.
Okay. And just a question, it's just a thought in my head. It's kind of not really off the topic, but do they provide any service that we provide any services at these departments? To help them gradually buy a house,
Yes, so some of that is incorporated in the
Okay.
wraparound services for the affordable units and for those living in the work-based or participating in the work-based training.
I know it's a lot of
program.
I was trying to get my question right too. Okay, thank you.
Sure.
That's it for me.
Thank you. So going back to that, going back to the housing units, that we have a mix, it's gonna be mixed use, fair market and affordable. Said at least 10 are gonna be
Yes,
affordable, and that's affordable based upon
no more
the
than 30%, the HUD.
HUD guidelines, not what the city, we were looking to make some additional changes. So just
Correct.
based upon HUD guidelines.
Correct.
And are our funds contingent upon TLC closing with PHFA? Or are they going to be allocated this money, no matter how the closing goes with PHFA?
So at this point, they would be allocated. Is there any?
Oh, it's contingent. So
The
there are
project is.
4 different financial bodies. The other 3 are ready to go. We are the smallest number. And they cannot close without 100% of the cash at the closing table. So PHFA, RBC Capital, and is it First National Bank, FMB, are the 3 that one's an investor, one's a construction loan. PHFS was providing, I believe, a tax credit related portion of it. And then they have been ready to go, but this had not been actually formalized before. So it had to come before council. Their anticipation date is to close in February. That is, they have a nonprofit law group that has been representing TLC to get to this closing. I have talked to the folks on behalf of PHFA as well. So they've been anxious and ready to go.
Okay, thank you. And then with respect to section 3 and the other projects. Could you speak to those a little bit? So the YMCA Cornerstone project and then Tri-County with the Mount Pleasant home development.
So YMCA that's also called YMCA Cornerstone. So TLC Cornerstone and YMCA Cornerstone. But YMCA is 4 homes up on Woodbine Street off of 6th and Woodbine. Those are 4 homes being built for sale, but they will be for low income individuals in the city. So they will have to meet HUD guidelines as far as income based on their family size to be able to be eligible. So those are 4 homes for sale. Mount Pleasant is 3 homes on 15th and Swadera. That is the last 3 in the Mount Pleasant project, which would total to 16. So Tri-County actually did the entire block. So they did a total of 16, starting back in 2010. But they're rounding that project out.
Okay. All right, thank you. Before we finish on Bill 2, any additional questions from any of my colleagues? President Bowers?
I guess yes, it is a question, just to clarify again. So the TLC project, it's the larger Allison Hill revitalization project that also includes townhomes that I think we previously voted on, and the renovation to the Allison Hill Community Center. Is that correct?
So
in
they
that part?
actually separated the Allison Hill Community Center portion of it, and this will
Okay.
just be all rental units.
Okay, thank you for clarifying.
Sure.
Any additional questions? Seeing and hearing none, ask that Bill 2 be moved to the legislative agenda for a vote. Next, we have Resolution 3 of 2023, a resolution authorizing the city of Harrisburg to allocate and expend funding pursuant to the city's unused fiscal year 2018, 2019, and 2020 Home Investment Partnership Program awards, and to enter into and negotiate into agreements necessary to effectuate the distribution of such home funding. I'll turn it back over to Director Hill.
So this was the portion where I was to give more detail on the TLC project in particular. So I jumped the gun a little bit. But this resolution before you is just essentially stating that multiple years of funding were combined to come up to that 600,000. So that is common in home development funding because these are for larger projects. So as opposed to opening them to one application, on average, we get about $500,000 as an entitlement. So multiple years are put together and then an application is put out. So this particular one, Resolution 3, is just laying out the fiscal year going all the way back to 2018. So the breakdown is there in the resolution of how much out of each year, which would bring us to the total.
Okay, and then just for the public, and I'll read the numbers during the legislative session as well. The funding from home, which was left over and it's being combined, is $122,375.22 for fiscal year 2018, $412,653.49 for fiscal year 2019, and $64,970.89 for fiscal year 2020. As first question, then I'll open up to my colleagues is it typical for us to have that much money left over in the fiscal years for home, or what led to us having, such higher, the higher number, particularly in 2019?
So only in the event where it is decided that money will be pooled together, multiple years will be pooled to have a larger lump sum to make a meaningful application. So we
Okay.
wouldn't see something like this as far as leftover. It's just actually untapped altogether until enough time accumulates so that money. So we won't see large numbers like that of leftover money for another couple of years.
Okay, and then sorry, one last question. The typical period of performance for home is how many years?
And the affordability period is 30 years.
Right.
But
But in terms of to use those funds, we have 10
yes.
once they're allocated. Okay. Thank you. Open up to my colleagues. This time I'll start to my far right with Councilwoman Rawls. Any questions?
Thank you. No, none. I was just wondering about the time frame too, of when to use it. So my question was answered. Thank you.
Vice President Green,
Thank you, Councilman Majors. I don't have any questions for you. Thank you.
President Bowers,
I don't have any questions. Thank you.
Councilwoman Daniels.
Sorry.
Just, can you just repeat that again? Councilwoman Daniels. All right, thank you. And Councilman Rodriguez.
No questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
And there is probably one item just to note for the public, the why this is broken out. In 2018 and 19, the city council adopted an annual home budget. That fell to the side because of the COVID expenditures, and they put their money ahead of everything we were doing. So that's how we ended up sort of in this sort of collective tonight, where we have the 2022 for the first time, part of the 2020 that's never been allocated on the bill, because you normally have these as a bill, and a resolution comes back for unused money that you previously budgeted as a council. So that's just giving you the structure of why this is these two pieces tonight.
Okay. All right, thank you. Seeing and hearing no further questions, ask that resolution 3 be placed upon the calendar for our work session. And that concludes the meeting of the Building and Housing Committee. I turn it back to you, President Bowers.
Thank you, Chair Majors. At this time, we'll open the floor for any public comment. Just housekeeping rules. You have 2 minutes to share your comments. Please state your name and your address for the meeting record. If you do not feel comfortable sharing your address, please share the vicinity in which you live. You'll have 2 minutes to share your comments. So we'll begin. Is there anyone to my right that would like to offer public comment? Okay, seeing and hearing no one. Oh, would you, okay, anyone in the middle section? Okay, seeing and hearing no one, anyone to my left? Seeing and hearing no one, the time is 5:55 p.m. I will entertain a motion to adjourn our work session.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
We stand adjourned. Thank you. Session beginning at 6. So I will call the meeting to order at 6. Mr. Truesdale will lead us in roll call. I will lead the invocation this evening. The Pledge of Allegiance will be led by Councilman Rodriguez. For communications this evening, we have a swearing in of our new council member, Mr. Robert Lawson, by the Honorable Judge Sonia McKnight. We'll then open the floor for courtesy of the floor, followed by approval of minutes. These minutes would be from the legislative session of January 10th, 2023. Next, we will hear reports of committees. The sole report that you will hear this evening will come from Chair Majors on the work session that just occurred January 25th, 2023 on behalf of the Building and Housing Committee. We do not have any ordinances for first reading or ordinances for amendment this evening. We do have one ordinance for final passage, that's Bill 2 of 2022. We will then move to resolutions. Our first resolution for consideration is Resolution 6 of 2022. I would ask that we suspend the rules for discussion and then resume our legislative session to vote on this resolution. It's time sensitive. Next, we have Resolution 3 of 2023, which we will vote upon. Resolution 5 of 2023 will move to the Administration Committee. Resolution 6 of 2023 will also move to the Administration Committee. Resolution 7 of 2023 will move to the Parks, Recreation, and Enrichment Committee. And our final resolution for consideration is Resolution 8 of 2023, which will also move to the Parks, Recreation, and Enrichment Committee. Is there any old business for discussion, council members? Okay, any new business? So if anyone has any new business, we will discuss it there and then we will stand adjourned. So we have 2 minutes and I will call the meeting to order at 6 p.m. officially. Thank you, everyone. 5 p.m., I would like to call our legislative session to order. Mr. Truesdale, could you please call the roll?
Ms. Daniels,
Here.
Ms. Green,
Present.
Mr. Majors,
Here.
Ms. Rose,
Present.
Mr. Rodriguez,
Present.
Ms. Bowers.
Present, thank you. I will lead the invocation this evening. I would ask that everyone please keep the following residents, families, and friends in your thoughts and prayers in the coming weeks and months ahead. Mr. Ricky Fleming, he received his formal education in the Harrisburg School District. He served as a cook. He enjoyed fishing, shooting pool, and listening to old school music. Miss Diane Patterson Staff, she was a proud 1976 graduate of Harrisburg High School, where she was actively involved as a cheerleader, softball player, gymnast, senior class representative, and a member of the PEP Club. She was employed by Meraki for over 25 years. In her leisure, she enjoyed volunteering with youth sports organizations. Mr. Kenny Jones, he was a proud 1969 graduate of the former John Harris High School. He was a talented athlete. He was the best catcher in the Northeast League. He played baseball and football at Edison Junior High School and was the center for the John Harris Pioneers football team. He retired from the Mechanicsburg Navy Depot following 23 years of service. Mr. Arthur Lewis was also educated in the Harrisburg School District. He was a stellar athlete. He had an excellent football career. He played in the 1961 Pennsylvania Big 33 Football Classic. He received a full football scholarship from Virginia Union University. In 1967, he played semi-pro football in the Canadian Football League, followed by playing with teams such as the Harrisburg Capitals, the Chambersburg Cardinals, and the Hagerstown Bears. He was also a successful businessman. Little Miss Ivory Nunez, she was born in Harrisburg, and in fact, today would have been her 3rd birthday. Ivory loved bubbles, silly putty, coloring, arts and crafts, singing, dancing, and stickers. So I'd like to wish Ivory a happy heavenly birthday. Finally, I would also like to acknowledge the woman who tragically lost her life last night on State Street. Just pray for her family and her friends during this difficult time. So if everybody could please join me in a moment of silence, I would appreciate it. Thank you. The Pledge of Allegiance will be led by Councilman Rodriguez.
Thank you, Madam President. May you all please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you, Councilman Rodriguez. For communications this evening, we have the swearing in of our new council member, Mr. Robert Lawson, conducted by the Honorable Judge Sonia McKnight.
It's shorter than me.
There we go, right
All
there should be
right,
good.
I think
Yes,
it's better.
perfect, thank you.
Thank you, thank you. Good evening, everyone. This is an honor. Remember when we were out, what, 2020? Knocking on some doors, and this is what you wanted to do? And finally, you persevered. You got it done, right? Yeah, you're here. You pushed, knocked down the doors, and did what you needed to do. You have arrived. And now that you are here, don't let anybody take it. Have a voice for a reason. We need you in our community. You wanted the job, Now we need you to do, right? All right, do it to the best of your ability. Come on over here. All right, there you go. So we have Mrs. Lawson, who's gonna hold the Bible. Her husband, Mr. Roberts, gonna lay his hands on it, and then we have your daughter, your beautiful daughter, and her name is Corinne, and then we have Elijah. You ready? I do
I do
solemnly swear
solemnly swear
or affirm
or affirm
that I will
that I will
support,
support,
obey,
obey,
and defend
and defend
the Constitution
the Constitution
of the United States
of the United States
and the Constitution
and the Constitution
of this Commonwealth,
of this Commonwealth,
and that I will
that I will
discharge
discharge
the duties
the duties
of my office
of my office
with fidelity.
with fidelity.
Thank you. Congratulations. Thank you so much. We appreciate you. Please join us. Your seat is right over here. Again, congratulations and welcome. Officially, Councilman Lawson will serve as our Public Works Chair. We will now move to courtesy of the floor. Just a few housekeeping notes as always. You'll have 2 minutes to share your comments. Mr. Truesdale will serve as our timekeeper. I'd ask that you please state your name and your address. If you don't feel comfortable sharing your address, please share the vicinity in which you live within the city. And we will begin. I'll begin to my right. Is there anyone that would like to offer public comment? Okay, seeing and hearing no one. Anyone in the middle section? Okay, seeing and hearing no one. Anyone to my left? Seeing and hearing no one, we will move forward with our agenda. Next, we have approval of minutes. Council members, we will seek approval for the minutes of the legislative session that occurred on January 10th, 2023. Council members, are there any revisions to those minutes? Okay, seeing and hearing none, the minutes stand approved. We will now move to reports of committee. The sole committee report you will hear this evening will be from Chair Majors on behalf of the Building and Housing Committee on the work session that occurred earlier this evening, January 25th, 2023. Chair Majors.
Thank you, President Bowers. The Building and Housing Committee met today, January 25th, 2023, to consider one bill and one resolution. Bill 2 of 2023, an ordinance appropriating partial home investment partnership program funds from the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development for fiscal year 2020 and appropriating home investment partnership funds for the fiscal year 2022 and authorizing expenditure of such funds. Director Denise Hill provided us with the report. So for the year 2020, there was a reallocation of $64,970.89 for TLC workforce development, which will be which would help partially fund a project that they're working on on 15th and Regina, a 50-unit building, which would have a mixed use of fair market rate housing and affordable housing units. There are 17 one-bedroom units, 19 two-bedroom units, and 14 three-bedroom units included in that project. There is those are from the 2020 funds that leaves $409,946.11 unallocated from the home funding in 2020. We are expected to receive additional subrecipients to be identified and come back down to council for approval at a later date. And then for the 2022 funds, the funding will be as such. There is funding for TLC workforce development, which is $114,993.25 for the YMCA Cornerstone project in the amount of $114,893.25. And then for Tri-County Housing Development Corporation, Mount Pleasant Home Development, $114,893.25, which leaves a unallocated balance of home funding of $114,893.25. Going back to the project for TLC, the funding is a part of a larger funding, which will be discussed in Resolution 3 of funds that are going to be going into their overall housing. The city portion of the project is going into their overall housing project they're looking to do, which is $13 million. The YMCA project is for 4 homes that are for sale under low income. And then for the Mount Pleasant project, there are 3 homes that are going to be finishing up the project that is on 15th and Swatera. That has been a project that's been going on for 13 years at this point, and finishing up that block. Members of council ask questions regarding the use of the funds. We asked to figure out how many of the units a part of the TLC project would be considered affordable. We were told that at least 10 of the units would be deemed affordable under the HUD guidelines, and there are wraparound services that will be provided to those individuals that are there. And this funding is to help overall make sure that all these affordable housing projects get done. And I ask that council move to approve Bill 2 of 2023. Next is Resolution 3 of 2023, a resolution authorizing the city of Harrisburg to allocate and expend funding pursuant to the city's unused fiscal year 2018, 2019, 2020 home investment partnership program awards, and to enter and negotiate into agreements necessary to effectuate the distribution of such home funding. With respect to Resolution 3, we are combining 3 years of unused funds, which are $122,375.22 from fiscal year 2018. In 2019, $412,653.49 from fiscal year 2019, and from fiscal year 2020, $64,970.89. And those funds are being allocated to TLC as a part of the overall funding for their project which was discussed on 15th and Regina Street. The funds, the city not allocating the funds in 2019 is in part due to COVID-19, where we were focused on getting pandemic relief out to individuals. And so the home funds sat untapped until we were able to put them towards a project. And this is the project that the city is looking to allocate those funds to. And the city has 10 years from the time that we received the funding to allocate the funds. And I would ask that my council members approve Resolution 3 of 2023. And with that, that concludes the report. Thank you, President Bowers.
Thank you, Chair Majors. We do not have any ordinances for first reading or ordinances for amendment this evening. We do have one ordinance for final passage. That's Bill 2 of 2023. Mr. Truesdale, could you please read it into the record?
Bill 2, 2023, an ordinance appropriating partial home investment partnerships program funds from the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development for fiscal year 2020 and appropriating home investment partnership program funds for fiscal year 2022 and authorizing expenditure of such funds.
Thank you. Council members, are there any questions, comments, or concerns related to Bill 2 of 2023? Okay, seeing and hearing none. Mr. Truesdale, could you please call the vote?
Ms. Daniels,
Yes.
Ms. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Lawson,
Yes.
Mr. Majors,
Yes.
Ms. Rawls,
Yes.
Mr. Rodriguez,
Yes.
Ms. Bowers.
Yes.
Bill passes by a vote of 7-0.
Thank you. We will now move to resolutions. The first resolution for consideration this evening is Resolution 6 of 2022. Mr. Truesdale, could you please read it into the record?
Resolution 6, 2022, a resolution authorizing the city of Harrisburg to negotiate and enter into a professional services agreement with Dogwood Engineering Incorporated to provide general engineering and survey services for non-transportation projects on an as-needed basis.
Thank you. Council members, I will entertain a motion to suspend the rules for discussion.
Moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you both.
May I begin, Madam President?
Sure.
As you know, or you may recall, because this was the beginning of last year, there had been under the prior administration, significant RFP process that our prior engineer, Wayne Martin, oversaw to get a long-term engineer for projects, to basically get a master agreement that you can add tasks to. We had parallel ones of this. We've hired, I think, all together 3 engineering firms, Urban Engineers and TRC for traffic related, and this was the non-traffic related one. This contract was introduced in the beginning of 2022 and was set aside because we then retained Dogwood to act as engineering services. Because they were doing general engineering services and because this contract calls for the engineer to take assignments from the engineer, it was thought best to just set it aside. We have reached a point where we need to adopt this in order to meet the timeline for the $13 million grant that we received for the park system. We can't go back and start over looking for engineering programs to RFPs because we're supposed to spend 80% of the money by June. You know, we had just gotten the award. That's about $10+ million. And we won't be able to spend any money if we don't have an engineer on the front end. So this would be where a task would be assigned individually. There has been group meetings weekly now on the tasks that are needed for this grant to fulfill this grant program. If you recall, DCED is the one that oversees this particular grant program with federal money. I think we are up to 7 or 8 now assigned tasks that are anticipated being necessary for an engineer to complete, discreetly set out. We had spoken with the mayor, with Mr. Hartman. We met with the rest of the management team, with Mr. Baker and his team, and we've spoken to the folks from Dahl. What is clear is that, and they will advise that tonight, and I am advising it on behalf of the city, that they will not be permitted to assign work to themselves, that there will be a mechanism involving the management staff, Department of Engineering, and Mr. Hartman. And Mr. Hartman will, then report those to the mayor for what tasks are assigned. But we are on a clock that is up to HUD to actually move, because it's their money. And I will say at least the initial feedback keeps being that it's going to be very hard to get them to move that June deadline for spending $10 million. So, and we have not been allowed to spend any of it yet. So, because we just got the award. So we are asking to have this agreement adopted so it can be overseen by the engineering management staff and Mr. Hartman. As you know, which I'm sad to say out loud at the moment, about 11 o'clock last night, we received a message to Mr. Hartman from our engineering candidate saying he would not be coming to work for the city of Harrisburg. His indicated his family was not willing to make the move. There was a secondary candidate who then was recontacted today by Mr. Hartman and is supposed to be back to us. So we are sort of just in a situation that is not the easiest to deal with. But if we do nothing, we risk losing the entire grant that we just received. That's a total of $13 million. So I know of no other mechanism that would let us follow the law in terms of contracting, other than this contract that was here. When we discussed this, and I discussed with you last week, Madam President, the thought was, well, the engineer will be here by the 30th, so all's good. But it is where we are stuck at the moment. So I cannot tell you that we know the mechanism, because we didn't know we needed a mechanism until this morning. If the other candidate accepts, we will have someone on board. If he doesn't, I think the administration is still figuring out what to do in terms of getting an engineer on board.
Okay, well, thank you for sharing. Thank you for the update. I do have, I guess, a follow-up question regarding the candidate that is no longer accepting the job. So he was scheduled to begin on Monday, January 30th. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And how would our previous contract, I know that there was, I think, some overlap or extension that we had discussed that would occur during this month until the engineer started. So how does that work with this resolution?
So this actually relates to, I think, 3 other contracts, because the engineering contract with Dawood, the NW contract, and the contract for the interpreter services all had a resolution as opposed to a contractual hard stop of December 31st. The services for all 3 are necessary to continue, and addendums to those 3 extending the time of those contracts is coming to council for ratification, because we couldn't have them stop the work. NW does the advice for our mandatory filing with for the ARPA money every quarter. The engineering work was ongoing already and can't just sort of cease with no advice. And the sign languages, the public needs that here. So the idea is the 3 will come down for ratification as they're ongoing. But so there would be some overlap with the new engineer, with the idea that they would have to have some input on how long they needed additional services as they got up to speed. And since there's no one to have that input at the moment, I can't tell you how long it is. That's the simple reality of it. I think Mr. Hartman and Percy and his team are working to figure that out, but they thought they had the problem solved until about 11 o'clock last night.
Okay, well,
So
thank you. Was there anything that you gentlemen would like to share, or any?
introduce themselves and
Yes, if you could please reintroduce yourselves. I know you're no strangers here, and please speak into the microphone. Thank you.
My name is Bonnie Dalwood.
Can you move the microphone closer to you?
I'm sorry, my name is Bonnie
Thank you.
Dalwood. I'm the owner of Dalwood Engineering. I have with me Wesley Heisley. He's a professional engineer also. And basically, Wesley and myself have been working closely with city staff since last year. And meeting with them on a regular basis, really try and provide services and extension of of city staff on an as-needed basis. And I'll let Wesley review a little more about some of the activities that has occurred since last year.
Oh, boy, where to start? So, starting last year when brought on board, we had an initial kickoff meeting with Percy, and then we decided to have a standalone meeting every 2 weeks, which we have kept, and in times where we have a more intense project load, we've gone to a single week. So Percy and myself and whoever from either the city or from Dawood staff would get together on a weekly basis, sit down and discuss the projects that were appropriate for that. I think we've been working very well with Percy. I can elaborate on any projects, State Street, or any of the other projects that you may or may not know about. I'm happy to elaborate on those. I don't want to sit here and bore you with all the projects we have, although I could. But I'm happy to take questions if you have.
Thank you very much. Did you have something else?
And then basically, as we try to provide resource and conduits as other service lines within the company, whether it's highway needs, traffic needs. So we have been really cognizant of priorities on a weekly basis to make sure we address the needs as quickly as possible.
Thank you very much. Before I open the floor for questions from my colleagues, because I'm quite sure everyone is just trying to digest the information that Solicitor Grover just shared, I'd like to clarify that I was not aware of this at 11 o'clock last night. I was informed by Mr. Grover literally before we started the meeting. So thank you for sharing publicly, and I do apologize for the blindsiding council members. That's never my intention. I do have one question, particularly, and I don't know if you can speak on this, the status of the State Street project. I was expecting residents to be here tonight, maybe expressing their frustration a little bit with the status of the project, and another pedestrian was killed just last night. So it's still very fresh, and if there's any information that you can provide in terms of an update on that particular project, I would appreciate it.
Certainly. Starting towards, I think it was the end of September, early October last year, we came before you to tell you, to fill you in a little bit more about what we had put together for the State Street redesign. After speaking with the residents, after speaking with PennDOT, we put together a comprehensive plan for the redesign of State Street. At that point, I made it known that there was three things that had to happen for this to be put on the ground last year. I said it was possible, but not probable. Unfortunately, we were not able to put all that we had designed onto the ground last year. That gave us the opportunity, because the type of work that we're doing involves pavement, asphalt pavement, concrete pavement, and line striping. Neither one of those three is conducive to winter weather. So PennDOT actually has restrictions on when you can do that, especially if PennDOT's paying the bill. So at the end of October, October 31st, you are no longer allowed to pave until starting again in the spring on April 1. So that whole period now was open to us where we could take a little more time to go through this process and make sure things were done on a more comprehensive basis, that we made sure that we dotted our I's, crossed our T's, made sure that everyone had enough time to review the drawings, review the plans, get their comments in. As a result, we have we sent our drawings out to PennDOT. We just last week received the last set of comments from PennDOT. There are no major, they proposed no major changes to the drawings. Most of the changes that they have asked for are very minor detail type things. This sign instead of this sign. Can you put a no right turn sign here instead of a no left? Those types of changes. We don't like this striping diagram. Can you use a different little type of striping? That kind of thing. There was no, yeah, we don't like this design. We want you to change it. There was none of those kinds of comments. Some of the comments some of the things they have asked for were changes to the traffic signals, how they are interconnected. And they call it adaptive signals. So basically it's a little bit newer way of doing traffic signals. So the traffic signals will adapt to cars and the timing of the day. It's called adaptive signals. So they've asked for that to be installed, which I'm more than happy to do. That was probably the biggest item for the State Street. So PennDOT has asked for these revisions. We have already made those revisions to the drawings. Either at the end of this week or the beginning of next week, we will be releasing those drawings to the contractor for pricing. At that point, the contractor will have, we're going to give him about a month to go through his pricing again to reprice the project. And then we will have to come before you again, I'm sure, to reallocate funds for that.
Okay,
So that's the status.
a few questions. Thank
Okay.
you for the updates. So I guess my first question is, with the change in administration and the individuals that you've been communicating with at PennDOT, do you anticipate anyone else's review of the plans or?
No.
Okay.
No, the person that we were dealing with at PennDOT District 8 was the district executive,
Okay.
Chris Kufru. And, it doesn't get any higher than that.
Well, I just wanted to make sure there would be no changes and that would not
Understood.
affect the timeline. For the traffic signals, I think that that's very interesting because that was something that the residents were very vocal about during those 3 town hall meetings that were hosted. So with that, with the adaptive signals, was there any discussion or feedback from PennDOT about adding any additional traffic signals? Were they willing to accommodate the residents in that manner?
No, they were not. That was something that was taken off the table when we had the discussion with them before submitting their drawings. They told us outright, we will not even entertain any additional signals. The study that they had prepared 2 years previously had indicated that no additional signals were warranted. And in fact, 2 signals that were there were actually not warranted.
So what's it gonna, it's now 2 years later and pedestrians are literally still losing their lives. So what's it gonna take? Somebody just died last night, someone's daughter, perhaps someone's parent. I don't know who the woman is or was, but her life had meaning. So I don't know what it's gonna take, but I would still.
Well, can I clarify here for a second? So when we start talking about traffic safety, we call it the 3 E's. There's 3 E's in traffic safety. So there's education, there's enforcement, and then there's engineering, in that order. So the education and enforcement has to come first. And then when they are not effective, then we start talking about engineering.
Again, the value of life
I get it. I get
is
it.
far greater, in my opinion.
At this stage with the paving season beginning April 1, so really the goal right now is to have all the drawings and documents and contractor lined up so they can begin as fast as, and I will allow them as the phases.
So my final question before I open the floor to my colleagues would be, will there be any additional opportunity before anything occurs on April 1st or after for the residents of State Street to be very clear or be heard on the exact changes that they can expect? Will there be a follow-up town hall meeting or series of meetings? Is that something that's a part of the plan, or that time has pretty much lapsed?
That time is pretty much over. At this point, the design is static. So to go further with the design would put us back.
Can you please speak into the microphone?
I think if it would be helpful in terms of informing the public, to have a meeting just to review what is going to be constructed that occur, just as an informational meeting. As Wes mentioned, it's going to be difficult because it'll be so far and ready for construction to make any changes. But at least to let the public know this is what's the final approval from the department and this is what's going to be installed. So as activity starts, they'll have some general idea of what's.
Yes, I think that would be very helpful rather than just on April 1st. They're thinking it's a big April Fool's joke, perhaps, of whatever is occurring and how they will be impacted by it. So that would be my recommendation, just so that they have some level of communication with you and they're very clear on the recommendations that PennDOT has made as well. So thank you. I'll now open the floor to my colleagues who may have any questions. I'll begin with Councilwoman Rawls.
Good evening. Thank you for being here. I have a lot of thoughts and questions, but I will just, I agree with President Bowers about just, letting the community know on State Street what's going to happen. I think they'll understand, and letting them understand this is not a session that you can give any more, input, but here's the schedule on what is going to be happening starting April 1st. If you're able to outline it in detail, like this is what's happening April 1st and this chunk, and then this is what's going to happen the next. I don't know, how it's scheduled out, but just so they're completely aware, especially with parking. I know that's a big deal.
Okay, I clarify one thing.
Yes.
The April 1st is when the paving season starts. That is not necessarily when they are going to start on this project.
I understand, but just to
Right.
give somebody a time frame, didn't mean to interrupt.
And the timeframes are not set by us. That will be set by the contractor.
Right.
So-
Completely fine. Just let them know what it is. Like, you don't
Right.
have to have a meeting on April 1st or, in March. But if you say, hey, okay, everyone, we know exactly at least what the schedule could be. Let's go ahead and have an informational session for the public to let them know what's coming. I think that you will get less pushback if you make people aware. If you let me know, be aware of something, I'm more to say, okay, I get this. Instead of you just starting, then I'm really gonna raise,
I think the public meetings we had were very helpful and very, there was a lot of great dialogue during these meetings, and I think we continue with that.
Yeah, thank you. I guess that's it. I mean, my other questions mainly about the engineer, but I don't know who could answer those, but okay, that's it for me.
All right, thank you. Councilman Lawson, any questions? I know you're fairly new, but if you have any, please feel free.
Absolutely. And maybe I'm, getting a little bit behind the eight ball in this, but other than the adaptive lights, are there any other traffic calming features that are part of the plan just to help with avoiding incidences like we just discussed earlier with someone losing their life?
Yes, there are multiple features that we have proposed and PennDOT has accepted that involve traffic calming. There are leading pedestrian intervals. We are changing some of the timing on crossings to give pedestrians more time to get across. The crosswalks are now going to be featured. They'll stand out. We're adding striping along the parking lane. There'll be a 3-foot door stripe along the parking lane so people can open their doors without having to worry about getting clipped. The lanes are being better established with the line striping. Additional features such as that, I'd be happy to go over with you in person if you are interested, but I don't have the drawings in front of me, so I can't tell you every one of them, but those are some of the main.
Right, we really just want to, I'm just looking more for like the high level, kind of
Right,
like what
right,
you're
right.
doing, just to see what can be done to help, slow down the traffic on that street. So that way, more people have a chance to cross. And then when you said that the crossing lanes will be more featured, like how does that work? Like,
So are you familiar with Front Street in Warmensburg? If you go
Yes.
across the Market Street Bridge and make a right, you know how the crosswalks there are painted, the big striping there in
Right.
front of Duke's? That's
Okay.
the kind of striping we're proposing.
okay, all right,
So it's very obvious. Naturally, when you approach something like that, you want to slow down just because it's something different.
Mhm.
And then your brain tells you, well, this is a pedestrian walkway. I need to figure out whether there's pedestrians coming. Naturally, you slow down. So that's the intent behind it. We don't like to propose measures that only serve for a temporary slowdown. We like to use measures that aren't smack you in your face kind of things, but lane narrowing. So we're narrowing some of the 12-foot lanes to 11-foot lanes. Doesn't sound like much,
Mhm.
but when you see visually, when you see a lane starting to narrow, the first instinct is to slow down. That's what we're looking for. And we think we can get it with the design we have.
all right. And this one may be for Neil. Just stating without having an engineer and the 10 million being in jeopardy, am I crossing two different conversations? Or
No,
what's
it's
going on?
we have received a grant very late last year. It's federal money left over sort of from the COVID period. DCED has the funding. They opened up this funding pool. The city received a very large grant of $13+ million to renovate 5 parks, including the Jackson Lake pool. Any type of renovation like that requires a whole series of engineering input that has to be done. DCED, as the direct recipient of those funds, is under the clock to satisfy that the money is spent according to the federal guidelines. The guidelines say 80% of that money must be spent by June, which frankly seems an impossibility. But we can't start without having an engineer on board to do the initial task of an engineering firm for the design. They've treated these as 5 separate projects under the award. So we have to break them out as 5 projects, and we need engineering to do all of it. The lack of an engineer has now gone on for 15 months, longer than that, 16 months. We had finally gotten a candidate after a lot of effort and looking who was a retiring engineer from another state. And he then declined as of last night to come in. That doesn't change the need for the engineer for the large project that we have. And if we go out the other way, we RFP, review, score, we won't have an engineer on a contract till May. And this contract is the contract we have where you can add task orders to it for specific engineering functions that are non-transportation. And the park system is a non-transportation type of engineering function. So, I'm not sure that's clear for you, but there's been an awful lot of hoops to get here. And frankly, we thought we had the needle threaded until this morning. So, And there is another candidate. I have no idea whether that interest is genuine, because that last interview was quite some time ago, but they did contact him today, and I understand there's a discussion going on.
And when do we need resolution for this?
We're
this
asking for a
contract?
vote tonight because we can't start anything at all
Well,
with the other contract.
the reason I'm asking, because we're looking for a resolution on this tonight, but we don't know if we have the engineer.
No,
They're the.
they're
so
serving
you're
as a
serving-
contractual
all right.
engineer
So
as
they're
well.
looking to take that job on as well.
Right, they've had that job
All
for the
right.
last year. But the one condition is they can't assign themselves work.
Right.
So we have to come up with a mechanism to review what has to go out.
All right, that's where I was looking
Right.
for clarification, and that's why I was asking. the
And the
question.
mechanism will absolutely come back to council. That's, we were in a long discussion with the day, what that would be. I don't think you should decide on it. I think we have to think about the right way to do it. I think the engineers themselves will be able to have good input. What are the check boxes to make sure that this is managed correctly?
I'd like to object quickly. I think they should be contingent upon that mechanism. Maybe whether it's checking in with council or reports.
I don't think we're saying the different things.
But just my input.
I think I don't think we're saying different things. I just
Gotcha.
think we couldn't make up a mechanism between this afternoon and tonight
Right.
without thinking about it. I think that they can't have an assignment until we have the mechanism.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you. Vice President Green?
Thank you, President Powers. Thank you all for being here tonight. It is a little upsetting to hear that we won't have an engineer starting. But the process moves on and hopefully we can get that resolved soon. I will say, I've got a couple of thoughts, different questions. So if we would award this contract and you can't assign yourself work, and then you would have to find someone else to assign the work to, wouldn't that still be a waiting process and another firm? And what makes this way quicker is kind of my question. Like, if you're the traffic engineers and this is a complete non-traffic project and you can't assign yourself the work, then all the work that needs to be done, you'd have to assign to another company, which means you'd go get another company and create a contract with them to assign the work. What's the difference between us getting another company, creating a contract and assigning them the work?
Okay, that is not what's under consideration. They're not looking, the city's not looking to add another engineering firm. The mechanism is the city to assign the work, because we have a list of known projects that have to be done. We've identified them in grant agreements already, grant proposals that had a lot of detail in them, that these are the things that had to be done. So those were in an application that was approved by the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And so we already have a list. So the question is, what is the mechanism to make sure they're assigned to the limited of that list that are on our things that we then present and make them task orders that get attached to the contract?
Okay, my question is, no offense, but then what do we need this contract for? I
So-
guess.
So, go ahead, Neil, sorry.
This
ahead,
contract's a
Solicitor, go
master
ahead.
agreement,
Mhm.
which the model of it is that you can have tasks that are individually assigned as opposed to an agreement with one scope of work. So this was RFP, so you have an engineer, so as tasks come along, you can assign them.
I get the original purpose of it,
Mhm.
but that was when we had an engineer that wasn't this same firm. I remember the whole conversation when they were kind of brought down together. I guess I'm just not understanding why this needs to be passed. I understand the money that's on the line, right? I just don't see how this gets us to the end goal faster. Maybe Councilman Majors can explain a little
So-
more.
And Neil can correct me if I'm wrong. So we're looking at two different things. So right now, they're already doing the traffic and engineering. We have projects in other departments, because this is all for non-traffic projects,
Mostly Parks and Rec.
mostly Parks and Rec. Traditionally, we would have a city engineer who would be assigning doing and assigning that work, and if they had the PE, they could also sign off on some of those projects. Because we are lacking a city engineer, this is to essentially allow them to serving dual roles, the people that would be assigning them the work for the non-traffic piece, based upon at the beginning of this discussion, would be a group of people which consist of the business administrator,
Mr. Bullock,
Mr. Bullock, and
I am
and then-
assuming Mr. West,
maybe Mr.
and
West.
then I think even other people within the engineering
Right.
department.
So
Okay,
it's
so they
for,
would be doing all of the work.
so they would be
just
doing
they
all of
wouldn't
the
assign it.
engineering work. They
They
can't,
would just
they
took
can't
the
sign
sign-offs
off.
in the city
Right.
for the
Correct.
signs.
Right,
So
right. We can't-
essentially, they're still doing everything.
They'll be,
Yes.
yeah, they're doing more than they currently are. So
Right, it's-
it'd be all of the engineering services for the
Right.
city versus just the traffic piece, which we had them doing the
Right.
work for.
So it brings
previously.
us back to the exact same thing we were talking about.
Yeah, it still
last
brings, I think the biggest,
Yes.
yeah,
The exact same thing. Okay, I was just,
Yeah,
I kind of
biggest
felt like.
issue-
We digress.
Yeah, we
We
digress.
digress.
Okay.
So and
The
so
mechanism you're looking to create is forming a body that would assign them the other work,
Right,
so that
like
they
the-
technically wouldn't assign the work, technically.
they wouldn't assign the work, and the point is that an engineer, when we've had an engineer, can decide what work has to be done, period.
Mhm.
Though they will not have the ability to sort of just pick out something and say, we want this instead of that, which is what a city engineer would be doing. You know, they decide how the mechanism, how to run the engineering department. That's not how they're gonna decide how to run the engineering department. They're still gonna be looking for an engineer. I'm not saying this is the be all and end all solution. I'm saying that we're sort of at this moment, just by series of events, that
Right.
otherwise we would renegotiate the existing traffic contract,
Mhm.
which would have to be redone,
That was kind of my
renegotiated.
thought, like, isn't it?
And then we will be probably, in all reality, the earliest back to you in March. And that's the reality of that. And then that again puts us, back to where we're not going to be able to start any of the work on the grant agreement.
Okay, then would it make sense to make this a shorter contract or still keep it until what, 2026? Currently, this is a master agreement until 2026.
I think it doesn't make sense to make it a shorter contract. I think because there's an ability to cancel the contract for a convenience of the city. I think it's going to be administration reporting to the council for what's going on. I mean, and the council can, not allocate funds for something. That's what your power is. And I think there's going to have to be a little bit of faith in each other. I don't know what else to say it. I mean, but if the project fails, the money is gone forever. And we're sort of back to square one. And I'm trying to solve a problem that is frankly not easy to solve. So,
All right, that's all the questions that I have for now. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Councilman Majors.
Yeah, this is nothing against Dawu. I mean, I think the lack of communication from the administration on some of these things is frustrating. I get you heard very late last night, but we were informed via email when we had all been pushing to have a city engineer as a part of the previous budget. We were told that this was the option because we didn't have any good candidates. We were made aware that there were people that were seeking the position. We were all alerted that there was a candidate at the beginning of the year. For us to, be put in this situation, it's difficult because again, we have residents dying on State Street. We have people that we have projects that need to get done throughout the city. And we're back in this spot where, at the last minute, we're forced to, essentially decide between moving this forward or potentially forfeiting, millions of dollars worth of projects that are well-warranted for well-warranted projects in the city of Harrisburg. Yeah, I mean, any communication would have been helpful. I mean, I know that there were other people that were potentially interested in the spot, but again, there's so many opportunities for communication between council and the administration on things like this, and it's just frustrating that this is where we are. So just again, real quick, the people that are going to be making the decision, is it just the business, the BA, who?
That's
that's
the
the mechanism
mechanism. I
that-
think the finance officer is going to participate in it. You know, I'm saying, this is like new today, right? It just, how do we do it? How do we manage it as an administration? How does it get managed? And the thing is, the mechanism's got to come back to council to say, this is the mechanism we've come up with. I think it's a discussion. Our problem with the contract stuff is that the longer we delay,
Right.
the more likely we are to lose the funds.
Okay.
I think we, obviously we had an engineer that came on board last year as a permanent employee. We would not be
Right.
in this moment. It's
Yeah.
just a series of events.
Yeah, no, I mean, like I said, I just know that there were potential other candidates and people that had expressed interest. Previously, we were told that this person was the guy. And I don't understand.
He did an interview for the paper that he's the guy.
Right, right.
So
And that's the frustration.
Exactly.
That's
There
the
we go.
That's the
Full
frustration.
feature.
That is the frustration that I have as a council, as a member of council. And I'm sure several of us do. I mean, to do all of that and a week before you're supposed to start, pull the rug out from under the residents. I mean, we had residents that were happy that we were looking to finally get an engineer after several of us had expressed a lot of frustration with the last two budgets. And this budget, we actually had money in it for a city engineer. And we thought that we had a guy. We were told multiple times by the administration that we had a guy. And keep the same energy that you do and being so boastful about hiring somebody, and the people that made those decisions aren't here tonight to talk to us about why this person ended up not taking the position. That is frustrating, not just as a member of council, but as a resident. I mean, we know several residents of this community have lost their lives on the streets of the city of Harrisburg. We have so many engineering issues that we want to try to address. I think, Dawa is doing the job, but my frustration is at a boiling point right now, and I'm gonna stop for now. And President Bowers, go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Majors. Councilman Rodriguez. Oh, I'm sorry, Councilwoman Daniels, I apologize. Any questions?
Yes, so I couldn't quite catch it exactly. Why are we getting this this bill at such late notice?
So this bill has been in front of council for 13 months. It was set aside when Wood got the traffic engineering portion of the contract. This contract was RFP'd over a year's period before that to be a master agreement for task assignment for non-traffic. We did an identical one for traffic that was not the engineer, which had urban engineers and TRC were awarded contracts, and they did sort of the safety pieces for 2nd Street and 7th Street. This then became that we got this award late last year of $13+ million from DCD of federal money, CBDG-CV, I think they call it, with a hard stop deadline from the federal government to spend 80% of it by June. We can't start spending the 80% of it by June without engineering on the front end, on the designs, on the analysis. And the only contract we have here for this would be the traffic contract, which doesn't cover this work. And there's this contract that was RFP brought to the council and sort of set aside, one, waiting for an engineer, and two, because Dawood was the one now doing traffic. So it's brought here because we are at risk of losing the majority or all of the $13 million under the federal timeline, which we have no control over at the moment. So the question is, what do we do to hold on and get that project moving? Because we can't start the project without engineering. And so this is the only mechanism that is here that I am aware of. And I think I am open to all kinds of suggestions in terms of advising the administration and council of any other mechanism, but it's the only one we have without starting over. If we start over, we will never get close to not losing the money.
I guess I'm just confused. There's so many actors in this decision-making process. Like, why wasn't, like, no one said, hey, we have to think about this a potential expenditure that we need to approve in a timely manner. Like, I guess that's my concern is the process. Like, why are we making this decision with such short notice when we're talking about a lot of money, we're talking a lot of safety, and frankly, you know, we've been having so many questions and conversations about the engineering department. We had a plan that was working. We just had an administration that was not very competent at communicating it to residents. And instead of like making small adjustments to that, which would have been easier, just simply started over again because they didn't seem to understand what was done before. And I feel like there's just a lot of incompetence across the board. And well, you know, I hate having to make decisions at that short notice because that's usually the time when, you know, propositions are made that are not in the best interest of the city. So like I guess what I would like to know is who are the different people who were in positions to say, hey, we should look at this resolution, or we need to address this issue because we're facing a deadline.
So there is a group that started meeting weekly 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, which includes the grant administrator, Ms. Vollmer, the finance director, Ms. Kelly, Dave Baker, who's his designee, Deb, who's his assistant, the law bureau, the procurement officer, who coming up with how to implement the requirements of this grant that we have. And as we're doing it, you're coming up with a list of things that Rebecca Vollmer's working with the Commonwealth DCD. We're coming up with the tasks that have to get done to satisfy the grant. It is those tasks that bring about the realization that you have to have an engineer on the front end. Right now, we have to get title work done. We have to get surveying done. We have to get sort of an outline of a program done, all on the front end of this, and then a design analysis done for what equipment would go into each playground. And frankly, I think we don't know everything we need to know because an engineer has to weigh in on what they find at each of these locations. And the question said, which I don't think people were super focused on, that, you know, well, on the legal side, there are time requirements. If we're RFPing this, it is going to take months to get to the other side of this. And this tool was still sitting here in front of City Council. When we had that discussion, we had an engineer starting next week. And it seemed timing wise, those two things went well together. Then as of last night, we don't have the engineering, but that doesn't change the timing on the grant. It just does not.
Okay, and has our grants manager, grant writer had conversations with PennDOT about our ability to get them to adjust some of the deadlines?
It's not PennDOT, it's the federal government.
Yeah, usually the federal government can be flexible sometimes when their grantees are not
So
in a position to execute very well.
It is my understanding that every week we have asked, since we got the grant, is this going to be extended? And the answer is, it is up to HUD. It is a statutory deadline, and therefore you need federal action to change it. That is the answer that we got. I can't tell you that's true or not true. I can tell you that's the answer that we've been getting every week. And here's Ms. Vollmer, if she's the one in the conversation.
Hi, good evening, Councilperson Daniels. So even when we applied for the grant, we knew that the period of performance was very short. It was a year. It was announced in June, end of June. Applications were due August 1st. And the issue is that the money is coming down from the federal government through the state DCED to localities. And it's kind of like the stub end of all this funding, this CDBG COVID funding that DCED has, and they're trying to disperse the other $54 million that they had. So that's what was at stake at the end of June. And we applied, we all knew that it was going to be a short period of performance. But we were assured, everybody knew that it was ridiculous to prosecute a program in a year. And everybody assumed that HUD would give DCED an extension and that DCED would give us an extension. So and I've been asking them twice a week since we've applied and since we were granted. We still hope there will be an extension granted. So right now, the period of performance ends December 29th of 2023. There is this strange kind of stipulation that we have to spend 80% by June 3rd, which means 10.4 million out of our $13 million grant. We are still hoping for the extension. Everybody expects we'll get it. Everybody knows, everybody around, especially, it's not just because it's so difficult to spend this kind of money on these kinds of projects in less than 12 months. It's also because with the amount of money coming down from the federal government, everybody has tons of money and nobody can get contractors and the supply chain. So we actually, it's very difficult to find folks who can work on our projects because people are in such demand. So that's kind of where we are. We ask for extensions twice a week. I ask DCD and they ask HUD, will we get the extension? We all hope so. HUD says, I'm going to go on a little bit more. HUD has said, this is not up to us. This is legislative, and not legislative in like across the street here in Harrisburg, in DC. So that's one thing. It's also true that, so HUD gives the money to DCED, DCED gives the money to us. So we are a sub. So if we can't meet the deadline, then HUD can claw back money from DCED and then DCED can claw back money from us. So there's a couple different stages and there's a lot of different ways that this can be, that so even if HUD says to DCED, look, some of your subs didn't get their projects done in the right time, DCED still does not have to claw back the money from us. They can just let us do our project because they know we're trying our best and we're doing everything we can, as evidenced by these weekly meetings that we're having and everything that we're trying to do to get these things done. It's also true that HUD there's different levels of the kind of like, I don't mean to be facetious, but like the slap on the wrist that HUD can give us if we don't finish the project in time. So there's different things that they can do. They can say, well, you didn't finish on time, so we're going to give you a penalty, or we're going to require more reporting. There's a lot of different things that can happen. Right now, we're just sprinting as fast as we can toward trying to get everything that we're supposed to do done for this project in the time that we've got.
My questions.
Thank you. Councilman Rodriguez.
Thank you, Madam President. I too share the sentiments of my colleagues, and it's a bit difficult to get through my sentiments currently without acting irate or out of character, because like you just referenced, it's like a slap on the wrist. I mean, how we received the information was a slap in the face, right? I mean, how does the individuals that are losing their lives due to the lack of the work being created, the mothers, the grandparents, how do they feel? Gentlemen, do you gentlemen have children? How would that awaken your life if you found out one day one of your young ones passed away due to a traffic incident and could have been neglected, could have been negated, it could have been it could have been prevented? How would you feel about that? You can answer, it's okay. You don't want to answer that, do you? So imagine how our residents feel, right? Same way. How many projects do you currently serve in how many states in the US? How many projects do you currently manage in the US?
We have a staff of 150 employees, so we work on a number of projects. We represent a number of local municipalities and try to provide the best guidance we can for the public's benefit. So we try to provide guidance, professional services, and State Street, for example, was a project that the residents were not happy with our design. So we worked with the residents to modify the design.
Might I stop you for a moment? The residents weren't happy because they were woken up in a prisoner fashion, 6 a.m, told they gotta leave their homes to go get their cars. Some were senior citizens, disabled, that had to walk blocks, 5, 6 a.m. That's why they were a bit upset. I don't think it was really, if you're doing the work or you're planning the work, I think they would be happy about that. I just feel like it's a different energy, different information from when you were in front of us in February or March, I believe. And we kind of gave you similar sentiments about getting the work done. And it's just appalling. We received the email or the information. I was blown away. I couldn't wait to get the engineer started because that's what the city deserves. That's what the residents deserve. So now I just don't know how this continuously happens. I'm not sure if they just wake up and say, not Harrisburg, right? But I think it's our job to say, yes, Harrisburg is the capital. You should want to be here. Like, this is a great wage. These are great people. I guess I question, how are we trying to go back out after them? Like, if they just all of a sudden feel like they don't want to do it, or what's the process even look like? Neil, maybe you can answer that.
Okay, so let's not mix roles. This is the contracted engineer, not the one searching for an employee.
Mhm.
They're not the ones.
Well,
who
I
are-
was asking as far as the administration, what it
Right.
is. I'm not
Right.
managing anything. I'm not
Oh, I just, it
twisting
looked
my
like you were, it
words
looked
or
like you
anything.
were
No,
looking
sir.
at them. So,
Asking very direct questions.
oh, I got you, but
Yes,
it
sir.
looked like you're looking at them.
No,
So-
no,
so-
I'm asking in general. How
so-
is it handled?
So they did a search, they did advertisements. There was, I think, unqualified applicants is what happens. They got down to 2 qualified applicants.
And one took the job.
And one did, and was made the offer and accepted the job.
Mhm.
They were transitioning out of where they were, which happens in a professional environment. And, this is not the first time the city has had someone say yes and then say no.
That's the point
But that's
trying
not,
to make.
in the current atmosphere, that's not just the city of Harrisburg, it's all over. There's a
Right,
different.
But we are talking about Harrisburg right now.
Okay, but I can't change the world. You can't change the world in this sense. People
We
right
could
now.
together, though.
Well, if you can change people's minds on how to approach employment, because you're talking about a
Absolutely.
cultural way of doing things. There is not the same sort of, this is my job, and since I gave my word, I'm going to do it.
So even to that point, so what would be the follow-up to alert council that this took place?
Literally, it happened last night. The mayor didn't know last night. It happened last night.
Okay.
There was a meeting this morning, then there was a whole series of a full day. I think I have been in a chair in my desk maybe 10 minutes the entire day. I started my first event here at 9 o'clock this morning, and I haven't had a meal yet today. That is a typical day working in this building. So I can't tell you what the mechanism is when bad news comes. I can't tell you that there's a smooth way to do things. I think it would have been irresponsible to talk to you about this contract tonight and not mention to you, oh, and by the way, we got word the guy's not coming.
That's to my point. Like,
But my point is, so I don't have another way to do it. I would not be delivering that message typically. I know there were some other issues going on today, including the issue with the woman on State Street, that were serious and trying to be addressed by different people in
but
the
that's
city.
just the point. So he had mentioned minor fixes, right? But maybe that minor sign would have saved the young lady's life. Maybe just a sign, something as simple as a sign. See, what you may feel is coming from the outside in, trying to understand the culture, and we spoke about this. Harrisburg is a beautiful place, but to understand it is a way that you can serve it a bit easier. And that street, you're coming in from a highway, you're coming in from Pembroke, cars are flying. And residents, to my colleagues' points, did request something as simple as a new traffic light that could have prevented many deaths in the area. But for some reason, there's like a push and pull as to what the residents want. And it's frustrating. Nonetheless,
It's a PennDOT road.
yeah, absolutely.
We can't put a sign on it. We can't put a light on it.
Right.
We can't put a design on it till their engineers say it's okay. That's a process. If the Second Street two-way process was first on paper in the 1970s.
Right.
It's finished in the year 2022.
Okay.
That is road work. And frankly, I think elected officials, appointed officials should be frank with the public about the way government works.
Mhm.
Government is slow. It's naturally slow. It's designed to be slow. When engineering is it, there's a lot of people that have to review it, and you can't make a rapid change.
Absolutely.
So that is fixing a problem like State
Yeah,
Street.
but you had made a
Takes a
statement.
while.
You had made a statement. You said you couldn't stop the project. You couldn't start the project without engineering, but what good is the project if we no longer have residents?
Two different projects.
Right? Like, I mean,
Two different projects.
we are talking about like casualties, people.
This contract is
Right.
not about State Street.
So I
It's
get-
not
with
about
that- with that even
transportation.
To the side, right?
Right.
Let's neglect that. Do you guys have like maybe an itemized list of the things you have done since you've been contracted with the city, like work that has actually been accomplished, like finished, that you guys have got done?
I don't have it in front of me.
Would you like to share things that you guys specifically had worked on? Absolutely, that's my job.
Okay, so we looked at solutions for the Melrose Elementary School. We looked at different solutions for Ben Franklin Elementary. We researched and proposed a policy for new school zones.
They're just really like analytical things, nothing like really in stone, just analytics, pretty much.
More or less, yeah.
Thank you. No further questions, Madam President. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Before we move on, I believe Councilman Majors had one additional question. So if you could just bear with us for one moment. Well, while we wait, do any other council members have any other questions? Okay,
Think, with all of us up here on council, I think we're just a little frustrated. And it's not exactly with you all personally. I think it's more of we would like a city engineer. We don't know what's happening. We know you all are here as a contract. Of course, we appreciate Daywood taking on the contract because you didn't have to. Yeah, it's money, but I think in hindsight, in some ways you're trying to do what you can. And I think a lot of our frustration is just that we know we have some roads that aren't safe. You mentioned the two schools. My daughter goes to one of the Melrose, and I'm sure we all have family members or kids sitting up here that may go to those schools. So we know that traffic is a problem. My dad's car was hit today because it's an issue at Melrose Elementary. So it's not that, and I don't want to speak for everybody, but I do know we all care up here. And we don't try to put the blame on anybody, but that it's not enough communication. We thought we had an engineer, now we don't. Now today we're learning it, and now we have to, vote on a work that needs to be done. We know it needs to be done, but it's just a little bit of frustration. So I just wanted to say that.
no, thank you for sharing. Councilman Majors, did you have another question?
Yes, so just getting back to, I guess the reason for the resolution, with respect to the requirements, is it spent or obligated funds that need to be done by June? So the money actually has to be spent, PO.
Yeah, it's not encumbered. It's spent, which is ridiculous. It's an absolutely ridiculous. And when they say, so we're really clear, when HUD says it's not a policy decision, they're essentially saying they need an act of Congress to change
right.
the rule.
Right.
Now, I don't know how much federal money from COVID is sitting out there that it may become an imperative that Congress stick it into some bill between here and June. But they're basically saying our hands are tied.
Right.
That is your deadline. I wish they had said that clearer on the application side of it. But that is what they're saying, is that Congress has to act for us to get an extension, not just us, but everybody.
Right.
To get an extension.
Okay.
Yeah. I can't hear you.
Okay. So you said it was also CARES Act.
It's CARES Act.
It's CARES Act money. Okay. Okay. So have we, So again, this isn't a problem that is Harrisburg specific. It's
Or Pennsylvania
Pennsylvania
specific.
specific.
It's
So, right, yeah. So I think it's incumbent upon us as a city and us as council, if we could try to engage our senator, our US senators, Senator Fetterman and Casey, to see if they can work to try to get an extension for the use of these funds. That was my other question, despite some of the frustration. Getting back to that is, so it just has to be actually spent. So engineering work, a PO issued and items actually spent, and then all the work would have to then be done by.
we can't have the equipment designed, we can't have the landscape design, we can't have the landscape changed, we can't,
Right.
there may have to be environmental, there definitely is upfront environmental
Yeah.
studies that have to happen. And so they have to happen 5 different sets of environmental studies. There may have to be 5 separate sets of what they call certificates of title, showing back the title work and the restrictions and other people that have rights to the land. Those are all upfront things before you can put and surveys of the land, before you can put anything back on the land. I mean, so we've done this with the other, what talked originally, remember, we had a 5 playground project we completed, but it ended up
Right.
becoming 4 and 1 instead of just the 5
Yeah.
because it hit complications.
Okay.
I think that took us 4 years to get through that. And
Okay. All right. Yeah, thank you. That was the only question, because I just was curious about the timeline. Thank you.
I will give you my one concern about a risk. I think if it looks like we've done nothing, we are much more at risk of being in a pool that has the money pulled back than those that have started a process that they can see.
Okay, council members, are there any other questions, comments before we resume our legislative session? Councilman Lawson.
And you may have just spoke to my question and or concern, because what you've just laid out, there's no way to get 10 million spent by June, even if the gentleman had taken the job and said, I'm ready to start today.
Right.
We just wouldn't be there. So
But
what is
it's
the-
a not starting, that's the problem.
that's a not starting. So the likelihood of us losing the funds if we're started, you're saying is lessened than if we don't.
That is my opinion from working in government.
And what are your feelings on the likelihood of us still losing the funds, even if we do start?
I think that becomes much less likely because we acted in good faith, trying to follow the guidelines they laid out with an impossible timeline.
What would be the penalty, or if there are any, if we started and can't complete?
I can't tell you because there's going to be a menu of them, right? It depends how far along we got. I think good faith reliance that followed their guidelines as opposed to us not following their guidelines. We have to do it right, or we have a bigger risk of a clawback.
Will there be, and excuse my ignorance if I'm saying anything out of line, but will there be a cap as far as the limit of the work that the firm would be able to, I guess, either order out or receive themselves?
Will there be a cap on how much engineering work?
Well, as far as revenue is concerned.
I'm not understanding the question.
So will they be the ones issuing the work or receiving the issues from the management team?
They'll be receiving the
Receiving
issues
work.
from
So
the
is there
management
a
team.
cap or limit to revenues they can earn from those monies?
So under this contract, yes, there is a 10% cap of the total contract for all administrative work. And even that, we now only have about 20% of that 10% is in the budget for all administrative work. So we were just had a debate today about whether to amend it to increase the administrative costs, because there's recognition we need to pay for surveys, we need to pay for title work. And that the money that was set aside first was $280,000. It's not enough.
That's it.
That was DCD's recommendation for the amount for administrative work. That is just not going to cover professional fees for 5 projects. So we're allowed up to 1.3 million total for all professionals involved. And not just professionals, but other administrative charges as well. And that's, we deal with DCD all the time, like you see with CDBG, and that is always a 15% usually administrative fee for our direct monies. This is a 10% on for reasons I don't know, but that's the way when we're a subrecipient, it's 10% is the max.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions before we return to our legislative session? Okay, I'll entertain a motion to resume our legislative session.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. We've now returned to our legislative session. The resolution for consideration is Resolution 6 of 2022. Mr. Truesdale, could you read it into the record one more time, please?
Resolution 6, 2022, a resolution authorizing the city of Harrisburg to negotiate and enter into a professional services agreement with Dotwood Engineering Incorporated to provide general engineering and survey services for non-transportation projects on an as-needed basis.
Thank you. Council members, are there any final comments, questions, or concerns related to Resolution 6 of 2022?
Madam President, I just wanted to say, I really appreciate, as well as I'm pretty sure my colleagues do, all the work you gentlemen do with the firm. As you can tell, when people aren't just expendable. So when things like that happen, of course, emotions may arise. So we're just looking to your professionalism for guidance. And sometimes we feel there are miscommunications, loss in translations, and many other things occur. So if it seems like, I'll speak for myself, if I'm a bit emotional, it's because I may know some of these people personally. I may have worked with some of these people personally. And to see it continuous, it's once in a while, that's not even a good thing, but it happens with the kind of traffic we have, but it seems like it's just too current of an occurrence. And I just hope we can put an end to it soon. So thank you, Joe, for being here. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments, or concerns related to Resolution 6 of 2022?
Yes, again, and just one question now that since we're officially back in the session. With respect, during the suspension of the rules, we talked about still having to develop the mechanism. That's still, in terms of how the work gets allocated, that's still something that would come back down. I know we have their negotiated rates in the document that was provided, but in terms of the work, us authorizing this, does that authorization give the administration ability to negotiate what those
Tasks are.
tasks
And
are?
so basically the group that's meeting weekly under the thing is coming up with a list of tasks that's still, it's still being worked through. I would essentially believe that what we're going to do, because it's a weekly meeting, so with today's Wednesday, by next Wednesday, there will be an outline of a mechanism that would come back to council to, because the mechanism's got to work for all the moving parts. The procurement person has to be able to know how that works. The engineering office has to know how that works. Parks and Rec has to know how that works. Finance has to know how that works. The grant administrator can't do anything if it doesn't work. So you have capable people that can come up with a mechanism. It's just, we couldn't come up with it on a day's notice to figure out how to do it.
Okay. And then I guess question, if we were looking to potentially add a member of city council to this working group, is that something that needs to be done via an amendment to this resolution? Or is that just an agreement that can be made with the administration to at least be a part of the group that's working to develop what a mechanism looks like, since would be a working group potentially consisting of potentially either finance chair or the public works chair, since it's touching our engineering projects within the city of Harrisburg.
So on the fine line that the solicitor of a city walks, I am not here to give authorization on behalf of the administration of that. But at the same time, council has the right to put in any motion for adoption, a condition. And I think you simply have to make that's the condition of your approval as a member of council, and that.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Just to clarify, the work group is not included in this resolution. Is that correct?
No, the work is just is the one trying to get the
I
other
know
one done.
it's like an ad hoc work group. I just wanted to note that it wasn't formally in the resolution.
Right. I'm saying it would have to be in a motion.
I understand,
Yeah.
but I just wanted to note that it wasn't in writing in the resolution. Are there any final questions, comments, or concerns related to Resolution 6 of 2022? I do have one comment I'd like to make. Just to clarify, we have not had a city engineer since our former engineer resigned on November 4th, 2021. That is a total of 447 days. When I agreed to add Resolution 6 of 2022 to our agenda tonight, I did so thinking a new engineer that had been offered the position would begin on January 30th, 2023. We learned tonight, sort of by happenstance, but thank you, Solicitor Gover, for sharing that the candidate has now declined the offer 5 days before beginning the role. I'm really a little frustrated and disgusted, honestly, that my colleagues and I have been blindsided by this. Even if it was at 11 o'clock at night last night, we were here until nearly 10. So I think many of us were still awake. We could have learned of this information. I don't think that it's fair to us or the residents. Resolution 6 of 2022 was previously discussed during our March 1st, 2022 work session. The resolution was tabled at that time because we acted upon a companion resolution, Resolution 12 of 2022, which granted Dawood Engineering Incorporated an addendum to a professional services agreement to provide services as the city engineer, as previously discussed this evening. We will now remove the resolution from the table to act tonight to ensure that the city does not lose funding to improve our parks. So while I know everybody is very frustrated and emotions are high given the accident last night, let's just be mindful of the work that will be done through this resolution, the short-term work. So I just wanted to note that and clarify that I too was not aware of the engineering situation. Are there any final questions, comments, or concerns from any other council members?
Yes, President Bowers, at this time, would it be the proper time to make a motion to an amend? Or should we wait until?
Yes, I'll entertain any amendments at this time.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to make a motion to amend Resolution 6 to include a condition that a member of City Council be included in the negotiation process and the developing the work group and/or mechanism as to which Dawood Engineer would be assigned any task in accordance with this professional services agreement.
And just for clarification, to be determined by the president of council who
Yes,
was
to be
assigned to it.
determined by the president of council.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you. Council members, are there any questions, comments, or concerns related to the amendment posed by Councilman Majors? Okay, seeing and hearing none, Mr. Truesdale, could you please call the vote?
Ms. Daniels,
Yes.
Ms. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Lawson,
Yes.
Mr. Majors,
Yes.
Ms. Rose,
Yes.
Mr. Rodriguez, Ms. Bowers.
Yes,
The resolution passes by a vote of 7-0.
thank you very much. We will now vote on the amended version of Resolution 6 of 2022. Council members, are there any questions, comments, or concerns? Okay, seeing and hearing none. Mr. Truesdale, could you please call the vote?
Ms. Daniels? Sorry, one more time.
No.
Yes, thank you. Ms. Green?
I'm voting yes because I want to see us move forward with the project, but I'm not happy with the process that we've come to because we went back to where I don't think I'm supposed to talk during a vote, but anyway, we went back to where we were a year ago. And so it seems like we moved backwards. And if this was the same place we were at a year ago, then how come we hadn't come up with a solution a year ago? I'm voting yes reluctantly.
Mr. Lawson,
I'll vote yes.
Mr. Majors,
Yes.
Ms. Rawls,
Yes.
Mr. Rodriguez, Ms. Bowers.
Yes.
Resolution 6, 2022, as amended, passes by a vote of 7-0. Oh, 6-1.
6-1.
Sorry.
Thank you. Our next resolution for consideration this evening is Resolution 3 of 2023. Mr. Truesdale, could you please read it into the record?
Resolution 3, 2023, a resolution authorizing the city of Harrisburg to allocate and expend funding pursuant to the city's unused fiscal year 2018, 2019, and 2020 Home Investment Partnership Program awards, and to enter and negotiate into agreements necessary to effectuate the distribution of such home funding.
Thank you. Council members, are there any questions, comments, or concerns related to Resolution 3 of 2023? Okay, seeing and hearing none, Mr. Truesdale, could you please call the vote?
Ms. Daniels,
Yes.
Ms. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Lawson,
Yes.
Mr. Majors,
Yes.
Ms. Rawls,
Yes.
Mr. Rodriguez,
Yes.
Ms. Bowers.
Yes.
Resolution 3, 2023 passes by a vote of 7-0.
Thank you. Next, we have Resolution 5 of 2023. Mr. Truesdale, could you please read it into the record?
Resolution 5, 2023, a resolution reappointing Mr. Dan A. Schuldler, Esquire, to serve on the License and Tax Appeal Board.
Thank you. Resolution 5 of 2023 will move to the Administration Committee. Next, Resolution 6 of 2023. Mr. Truesdale, could you please read it into the record?
Resolution 6, 2023, a resolution reappointing Ms. Evelyn Hunt to serve on the License and Tax Appeal Board.
Thank you. Resolution 6 of 2023 will also move to the Administration Committee. Next, Resolution 7 of 2023. Mr. Truesdale, could you please read it into the record?
Resolution 7, 2023, a resolution authorizing the city of Harrisburg to accept an increased grant award in the amount of $275,000 in furtherance of its submission of a grant application to the Pennsylvania Department of Conservation and Natural Resources C2P2 Park Rehabilitation and Development Subprogram to develop Phase 2 of the Chutes and Ladders Playground in Reservoir Park.
Thank you. Resolution 7 of 2023 will move to the Parks, Recreation, and Enrichment Committee. Our final resolution for consideration this evening is Resolution 8 of 2023. Mr. Truesdale, could you please read it into the record?
Resolution 8, 2023, a resolution authorizing the city of Harrisburg to award funding in the amount of $40,000 to the Capital Area Greenbelt Association for their performance of maintenance on city-owned land in the Capital Area Greenbelt.
Thank you. Resolution 8 of 2023 will also move to the Parks, Recreation, and Enrichment Committee. Council members, is there any old business for discussion tonight? Councilman Majors?
Yes, I guess. Well, it's technically, I guess it's old business, and one of the things that I know we as a council are interested in, so is our community, is the allocation and use of the American Rescue Plan dollars. I don't know if and when we're expected to hear anything from the administration on when those more robust conversations are going to go. I know we're continuing to do our reporting as required by the federal guidelines, but in terms of us actually beginning the process to expend those additional resources and look at some of the projects that, you know, such as affordable housing in the city and doing a lot of the other using the money in a transformational way for our city. That's a conversation that still looking forward to having and just trying to get a timeline as to when those conversations may begin to occur.
Well, two different things. I expect that there'll be budgets for that coming very soon, based on what has been prepared by DBHD. And two, and that's the Law Bureau working with DBHD to come to the actual budgets. Our expectation on the Law Bureau side is that those budgets be somewhat robust in terms of detail, as opposed to broad category by themselves. So that's where we have gone back and forth a little bit about how much more detail and breakdown of those funds are, as opposed to just a lump sum for this or a lump sum for that, and so that's what we're working through. At the same time, I think Ms. Hill would be perfectly capable of coming in and presenting to you about where they're at, what the thinking is. She's been creating programming related documents to go to the proposals that are coming, so that the programs will be able to get up and running. So that's what her and her team have been working on. And ours is working on the mechanics of the actual budgetary document that it has to match up to. Sort of like you get when you see a CDBG budget, have specifics in it all the way through for you. The same sort of concept. This one is different and more complicated because it actually has brand new programming in it, which is not what CDBG does. It's not what Home does. It's not what ESG does. We're still trying to figure out whether it has to have a companion piece of ordinance authorizing those programs. And frankly, I don't have an answer to that yet. Or whether the administration is just going to have the leave to create programs from City Council. I think that's a discussion that's not with the Law Bureau per se, but between the council and the administration.
Right.
How much discretion is given and how much does it needs to be put down into an actual law that authorizes it. For example, we used to have loan programs that were a disaster, but they were by ordinance, so that is a more robust discussion to have.
Yeah, I think just looking at what some other communities have done across the country in terms of allocating their ARPA funds, there typically was a robust conversation between an administration, a council, and the public on how those funds are going to be spent. And we talk about in our ordinances, any spending above a certain dollar amount does require city council input and ordinance or a resolution to be passed, particularly if we're talking about starting new programs with dollars. I think we have to talk about the efficacy of those programs, how those programs will continue to potentially be funded past the life of the ARPA funds. If we're looking at creating programs that can be sustained, or are we going to be looking at doing projects that are going to be capital in nature? Because again, these are one-time funds to do. We should be trying to get the most out of those funds. And I know we've had many, I think all of us attended community meetings at the beginning of this process, but haven't seen what those results of that community feedback and input are. So looking forward to more robust discussions with the administration and council on those pieces. Thank you, President Bowers.
Thank you. I don't think it's lost on any of us. I'm quite sure we're all aware of the guidelines and the dialogue that should occur. We just haven't received anything yet from the administration. So once we do, we will move forward and invite Ms. Hill and any other department directors that are involved with the next phase of funding proposals. Is there any other old business for discussion, council members? Okay. Oh, yes, Councilwoman Daniels.
Kind of an update on what the decisions have been around the encampment at Mulberry Street. I think the most updated information I have is from news reports.
I don't understand the question.
She's asking for an update on the Mulberry Street Bridge encampment. Are there any updates? All she has knowledgeable of is probably what the members of the public are aware of in terms of news reports and the press conferences that were held. Are there any additional updates that can be provided?
I have no update. That is
Okay.
not, I am not participating in that particular issue.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Hartman is present, Councilwoman Daniels. Is there anything that you can provide?
general information, like what are we returning to providing the regular cleanups? Are folks being relocated? Are they being relocated? Just the basic information about what to expect. Excuse me, sorry. That's it.
Okay, so just to give you a basic view right now, cleanup will be finished tomorrow with Public Works process. Then the people coming in and doing the pest control will be coming in soon after that. As it relates to providing services, we have moved the porta potties that were located there. They've been redeployed to where people have gone. Some have scattered. We've had some people who've checked into facilities, some people who've moved into permanent housing, some people who relocated to the PennDOT camp, some people who located near the new camp. So we have that going with the individuals there. Trash service actually never stopped. It was just a momentary pause when the rats were discovered so we could retool. For safety purpose, let's keep in mind all of these employees are AFSCME employees, and when a safety concern like that comes to their director, they have to go above and beyond to make sure that they are safe in their line of work and they're in the duty of what they're doing. So those cleanups only momentarily paused. They continued within a day or two after we were back there cleaning up the area. The last thing I do want to mention is as people have moved to other areas, there have been trash receptacles that have been added to those locations. And for the people that are moving into those different areas, Antoine Brown, the lot administrator for the city, is providing daily check-ins. So if there is a need for any type of service that would not be a standard trash pickup, he can radio those sort of things in to provide those services. Other than that, we're anticipating hopefully no more than a 6 to 8 week period at most to get that area cleaned up. It's going to be, it's quite a bit of a clean, further amplified by the Paxton Creek being there and a number of other issues. So they have to go in and thoroughly address the situation.
Councilwoman Daniels, any other questions? Okay, thank you. Councilman Rodriguez, do you have a question? Your mic's not on.
I just wanted to ask Mr. Hartman, there was news of actual individuals being able to go back home though, correct?
Yes.
Actually reintroduced back, okay.
Yeah, we've had a number of I'm not going to say success stories
Right,
of
right.
it because it's the whole situation just hasn't been what we wanted to happen. Just this one camp's being handled out of it, but from the providers and our people that are on the ground working, there have been a number of stories that do make you feel a little bit better about the tough decision that the mayor had to make to address that situation.
Mr. Hartman, thank you for being present. I would like council members and the members of the public to know that I did invite the mayor to participate in our meeting this evening to discuss the encampment. So I appreciate your presence and providing some updates.
And I'll check in with you after.
Okay, thank you. Okay, council members, is there any other old business for discussion? Okay, seeing and hearing none, any new business? Seeing and hearing none, the time is 7:54 p.m. Oh, I'm sorry.
President, if I may, just, I would advise that it is probably, because of timing, advisable to have an executive session immediately following this meeting on matters.
Okay,
I realize everyone's been here late 2 nights in a row, but there are matters of importance to discuss.
okay. Well, just for everyone's reference, Harrisburg City Council will host an executive session following our legislative session. Time is 7:54 p.m. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. We stand adjourned.